Good morning, everybody. Hello, hello. Hi. Let's see. Who do we have here today? Drop a hello in the comments. Tell me where you're calling from, what you're up to, if you're going to draw and paint along with me. Today's flower is the Mayflower, and I think that the Mayflower flower is one of the cool ones that we're going to do together because although the actual bud is really simple, it's kind of like a hydrangea where you have one simple flower to drop, but then it's a multi-budded flower. So you kind of have things coming out at different angles. So I'm going to show you how to draw those flowers really quickly. It'll be quick because we've already gone over this lesson and like how to draw them a couple times and how to draw this specific perspective. And then I'll show you how to paint them, and it's not going to be really complicated. It's just the kind of thing that takes practice. Okay, Barbara says, I am up in years. Listen, age is just a number. And I would say that we are all different ages, all different shapes and sizes, and the thing that has united us in these last couple weeks, and those of you who have known a lot longer or have come to my classes, the thing that unites us is that life is challenging and art is a good way to get through it. So Lori says 65 with gray hair and oxygen. Lori, my mom just turned 64 last week, and she had COVID very badly. For 2 weeks in January, she was in the hospital, and when she got home, she was on oxygen for more than a month. And my goodness, there are so many challenges. There's so many challenges in life, and that is not ever a thing that I want to focus on, is the how we look or the superficial nature of things. To me, art and creativity and watercolor and drawing and painting, all of it is this amazing method, this amazing gift that we have to cope with things and to make friends and to find people who are in that similar space of wanting to create together. And, I think that's the gift that we all have here, that whether we have good skills or bad skills, or we like the way we look or we don't, or we like the way we sound or we don't. I mean, listen, it has taken me a little bit of time to be comfortable with putting myself on these things like Facebook Live and listening to myself talk. I hate listening to my voice. And when I watch the replays, I'm like, oh, that's a bad angle, So anyway, okay, that's my lecture for today. Alrighty, let's see now. Oh yeah, you know what? I'm putting that comment right up front and center, Annette. We are best friends, old and young together. That's exactly right. Yep, I love it. How many people, give me a thumbs up if you've read or watched Anne of Green Gables? That's what my question is as I get my little things ready here. Okay, and some of you, if you have seen it or read the book or you know the story, you know where I'm going with this. I see a couple thumbs up happening. All right, I'm putting my camera down here so we can see what I'm doing. Okay, so some of you will know what I'm going to say, which is that Anne talks about in her story, Anne of Green Gables. If you haven't read the book or seen it, you've got to definitely read that book and or watch the movie with Megan Fellows, I think is her name. Anyway, she talks about kindred spirits. Regardless of age, regardless of anything, sometimes in life you just find kindred spirits who get you, You click with each other, and I think that art and watercolor, especially, we're drawing and painting flowers. What could be better than that? I think we're all kindred spirits here. Okay. All right. You know what would be a good idea? Is just to show you really quick. Let me show you this. Okay. Watercolor pencil. So you can shade with it like so. Okay, just like a regular color pencil. You could draw a little flower with it. Okay, so they work just like regular color pencils. But then when you add water to it, you'll see that it turns into paint. Okay, and you can kind of move it around, and if you have layers of it, like if I took that same color but had it shaded a bit darker, like this. Okay, it turns that into paint. You could just do really cool things with it. It's a different medium. It's not going to take the place of like a tube of watercolor paint or something, but it is neat looking. So, a reminder, you can win your own set of these really cool watercolor color pencils by sharing the story that I showed you earlier on my Instagram. Okay, let's talk about Mayflowers. They are simple flowers. They have usually 4 petals. Okay, and so I've already sketched it out a little bit, but we've gone over the perspective at the guidelines of how you draw something that's an ellipse. Okay, so we know how to do these circular flowers and these elliptical shaped things, which is basically you draw your ellipse for the guideline, you have a little mark in the center, and then for however many petals you have, you draw your rays through the center. So that's really easy. Annette says, bless you, thank you. Okay, and then, of course, we're always going to practice drawing the individual elements. So with those guidelines, this petal is a little bit heart-shaped. So we're just going to come in to that top of that guideline, come out, and it doesn't quite meet like a heart at the bottom. It kind of has a bit of a wider end to it. All right, so in that guideline, just for this front-facing one, that's the kind of petal we would draw all the way around. And then you could add the details and the contour lines and things later. Okay. For the ones from the side, I have 2 examples here. And that's a little bit more challenging, but it's still pretty simple. We've been over this. So you're going to draw an ellipse like so. It could also be a lot wider of an ellipse. Those will just make 2 different wide kind of flowers. Let's go with the wider one here, and I'm going to add just a little line down here in the center and connect it, and that's going to give us this nice bowl shape, cup shape. All right, and I'm going to draw a guideline through the center, and then my other 2 petals are going to come out to here where they meet there. So this front one, this is still my guideline, and I'm seeing the back side of the petal, so I still have my little heart shape here, and I'm just going to follow that guideline up and around like that. Back here I have a much bigger ray to work with, and then for the side petals, okay, we're going to do the same thing. We've done this a little bit earlier, but so we have our outside of the leaf, and then we're going to follow that right there and draw a line down. Okay, and follow that here and draw that line down, following the contour of that. And then if we erase our guidelines, we're going to be left with a petal. Okay, now this one is a little bit flatter, so that would be more like this. Have our guidelines, have our one here in front, and the guidelines are there not to be rigidly followed, but to give us a place where we can sketch things out. There we go. So that would be from the side, and that would apply either way, right? If we were going to do it from the other side, usually one side will be easier than the other. I don't know why. I guess it's just the way our brains work, but practice both of them. They're both the same way. Okay, and so just roughly here, we'd have our petal here, and our petal back here, our petal here, and one here. It's easy to practice these also when it's something that only has a couple petals. You know, with 4 petals, it's a little bit easier. So the place where this changes from what we've done before is it is a multi-headed flower. And so I've kind of drawn out already so you can see where I'm going with this here. Also, this isn't watercolor paper, which is why this looks weird. That's why it's important to paint on watercolor paper. So with a multi-headed flower, for example, well, you know what? Give me an example in the comments of a flower that has like lots of little flowers on it that make it up. We've done a couple already. Give me an example of what that would be. Annette says closer. There you go, Annette. I'll put a picture up on Instagram also and in the Facebook group so you can see those a little bit up close. Yeah, bluebell is a great example. The one I'm thinking of is a hydrangea where we have, you know, the ball, the whole big ball of it is the flower, but it's made up of so many little ones. Another one would be a lilac. Baby's breath is a great one, Chanelin. Another one would be a snapdragon would be one. Yeah, snowball, lilac, yeah, hydrangea, exactly. So, or one we did a couple weeks ago was Wild Phlox, or Dame's Rocket, we called it. And so that you're learning one flower shape, but then you're combining them in different ways. So the way that you go about drawing that is you still have your center stem. Sorry, I'm trying to keep the paper straight here, and that isn't how I usually draw. Okay, so you have your center stem here, and then you're going to have guidelines of all the different circles that are going to form up that center. So let's say that overall, here's our overall guideline, a big lollipop. And then within that, we're going to have a flower head here, and one here, and one here. And then you can have them off at angles and kind of do that bowl shape. So I'm filling in my guidelines within this overall guideline. Okay, is that clear to everybody what I'm doing? And all of these are going to be different flower heads, and these are just guidelines. I can go back and I can add more if I want to, or take some away. All right, I'll erase that stem there. Okay, and we'll have stems coming out of the center that come back to the main stem. So you want to just make sure you have those guidelines in there. And then for each of these, you're going to do what we've been doing over here. So for each of these, you're going to have that little center part, and you're going to draw your lines through it and draw your petals. Okay, for up here, you're going to have from the side. And isn't that helpful to see it broken down like that? It's actually a lot simpler than you think it is when you get these tips. Okay. So hopefully that kind of gives you a good idea of how you would go about drawing the perspective of a bigger flower like this. And then of course when it's over, you can add the shading in. Remember that flowers behind other flowers are going to be a bit darker, so make sure you show where that overlap is by having shading back there. And of course, if you feel like it, you can draw a little sunshine or something to remind yourself the light is coming from this direction. Okay, so it's going to be darker on this side and lighter on this side. And you know what? Let me see if I can find my handy dandy. Yes. Here. There we go. So the light is coming from this side. You can see that it's much lighter on this side and it's darker on this side, and that gives that this shape of going like a circle, right? It's a spherical shape. And this whole thing is one hydrangea blossom, but the whole blossom is made up of individual flowers, right? So there's little guys with 4 petals, and they're facing different directions. And so really the process of doing a big complicated flower like this is breaking it down into all of its smaller component parts and then tackling those one at a time. All right, so that's a good example of what I'm talking about. All right, who's with me? Who's ready to see how we're going to paint this? I'm going to be painting for the afternoon today. I have 5 commissions to finish. People commission me to paint their wedding bouquets, and it's been wedding season, I guess. So I have 5 wedding bouquets that I need to paint, and wedding bouquets are complicated to paint because they have a lot of flowers in them, and they're like a very sentimental kind of flower, so you have to make sure you get it right. So I have one of those ahead of me today, which I'm not upset about. I like spending the day painting. Thank you, Shannon. Actually, the original of that painting is still available. I'm looking at it right now. I just hang it up in my own studio space because then I get to look at it until they find a home for themselves. So what I'm painting with here, instead of using my fancy palette, or I just put some blue paint on this plate a while ago, and I just added water, and I'm going to use that up. Okay, so when we understand the different shapes of the flowers, the way that we have them pointed in different directions, and we have this multi-head thing, we can learn how to paint the individual flowers. So if we have, let's see, we have our ellipse here. Okay, and we have our bowl shape. And we have our first petal at that ellipse right? And then we have one behind it like this. I'm going really loose right now. And we have one like that, one like this. Okay, so when we roughly follow that shape with our paint, we're going to have our front petal. And of course, you can draw in the ellipse if you want, even when you're painting. And eventually you won't need to anymore. So we'll have our front petal, and then, oops, let me fix that. And then we'll have the petal that came from behind it. And I advise you to leave just a smidge of space between them because that will give it more shape and it won't look like a blob. And then here we have our petal coming out of here like this on the side, and a petal coming out over here on the side. So I'm just kind of roughly filling that in. And of course, when the first layer is dry, we go back and we add more detail to it. Okay, and then the stem would come out of here and the stem would come out of here. So you can kind of see how I'm just mimicking the shapes of these things over here. And then when it comes time to draw your multi-headed flower, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to have your guidelines. Okay, your maybe an elliptical one here, circle one here, an elliptical one down here. When I say elliptical one, I'm just saying that they are flowers that are on the side, right? We're seeing the side angle of them. Okay, so just a rough idea there. And then I will go in and follow the guidelines. You can draw the full guidelines if you want, or you can just start painting those petal shapes. If you're going to paint the petal shapes in like I'm doing, if you're going to give yourself a little outline like that, just make sure you paint quickly because otherwise you're going to get a hard edge. You could also do the wet and wet and add a lot of water first, like this. Like so, and then drop some more paint in just to see what happens with it. Okay, so there's different ways of painting it. If I did that over here, if I did the wet and wet, I'm just painting with water here. Just clean water. Can't see what I'm doing because it's clear water. And normally when I paint, I'm like fully hunched over so I can see everything. But then when I put that color in, see it's spreading out into the water. And that's a different look. That's kind of cool. You can sort of outline it then like this, and then just let the water do the work for you, and you can go back and do other things to it. So there's lots of different ways to paint them as long as you have the perspective right and you have an idea of what it looks like. You're going to be able to paint them. Okay, so lots of different ways to do that. And then, of course, you can go back, and this is not dry, but let's pretend that it is. Let's see. I'm going to help it along here. Okay, so when I come back to this, if it's not all the way dry, ignore that. But when I come back to this, I'm able to just kind of see where my petals are here. Okay. And I can soften that out with some water. And the petal that is behind this one is going to be a bit darker because that's the way shadows work. Okay, so I can drop some darker paint into that water, and it's going to start to pop out from behind that one. I can do the same thing over here. There we go. That. Okay, so you can see how those behind are starting to kind of jump out a little bit. This one's going to be a bit darker also because it's behind this petal. So I'm just going to add a little bit of shadow down here. And then I would let this completely dry also, and then go back and start adding in your contour lines and your detail. So this one is a bit drier, so I would start to add the veins into the flower and start to give it a little bit more detail and shape. Joanne says she doesn't understand the ellipse petal. If you mean this part, Joanne, you're just drawing your circle, drawing the bowl, and then this petal is going to come up and just meet that guideline right there. Okay. And the class I did, there's a couple classes. Any tutorial I've done about elliptical shaped flowers in the last couple weeks, I go into more detail about the ellipse flowers there. Okay. Okay. It's 12:30, so that means I've been monologuing for 30 minutes. Any questions before I sign off? Any questions about the giveaways or how to enter or drawing, painting? See, I'm adding even darker colors, and that's going to give it even more depth to it. Okay, so Joanne says the side one. Okay, the side petals. Okay, so let me show you that again. They're a little bit trickier, for sure, but once you get it. So first of all, the way that you're going to draw that petal is you have your petal coming out like this. Okay, and then you're going to kind of mimic that line, but a little bit lower, and go there. And then that's going down to the center. Okay, so on the other side, it looks like this. And then you're going to mimic that, and draw a straight line down. So there's the petal on the side. Here's the center. Here's the center. Shading helps. So here's the one that's folded over. Brooke says, please post your final dry picture with details when dry. Yeah. Brooke, let me tell you something. You are assuming that I am going to remember to do that. Just kidding. I'm going to try and remember to do that. I have to finish a commission today. I have a client that paid me a lot of money to finish this painting, so got to finish that. So hopefully that helps, but I will remember to post. It might be tomorrow when I post this one, though, my friends. So there is that from the side. So what that looks like when you have your ellipse is this, and then I'm going to come down and have my bowl shape, okay? So I have my front petal here. Okay, so now I'm going to just ghost the line, all right? So it would come up like this. This part here is going to be hidden behind the other petal. But if I was to draw it out, I will draw it out, okay? It comes up like this and like this. So you're kind of having, that's why I draw the X's on the side there. And then you have your other one coming up and doing this thing. Okay, and they're meeting, so you can follow the guideline, and then you can follow the guideline here, and then it would go here. So you wouldn't see this part. You're just seeing this part overlap. Does that help clear that up a little bit? And it does take some practice, but that's roughly what you would do. Let me move this out of the way. Hi. Okay. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any other questions, let me know. Now, I will paint. I will be painting. If you think of me this afternoon, I will be painting. Debbie says, thank you for sharing your time and talent. Thank you. Barbara says, thank you. I just love watching this. Brooke says, thanks. It's so helpful. Thank you guys for saying that. It helps me to know that I am helping, you know? It makes me feel like I'm not just talking into the void and just blah, 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 monologuing. So thank you for that affirmation. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your day to be here. And I find that wonderful. So, okay. Have a wonderful Monday. Bye.